Yesterday, the House of Commons marked history. The first budget ever given by a female Chancellor in over 800 years of that role existing. But let's put history to one side, because no matter who is making the announcement, the important part of a budget is what does it mean for me? So here's my take on yesterday's budget. Now, before I go any further, I'm only going to talk about budget announcements that impact energy and climate policy and how this affects non-domestic energy end users. So if you're responsible for your organisation's energy bill or ESG report, or you're a consultant or agency that supports those roles, this is for you. Okay, let's crack on.
Madam Deputy Speaker, to bring new jobs to Britain and to drive growth across our country, we are delivering our mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower, led by my right honourable friend, the Energy Secretary.
Even before coming into power, the Starmer administration made big commitments, and many of the more high-profile ones have already gotten underway. For example, Labour's flagship policy for the energy sector, Great British Energy, a new publicly owned clean energy generation company, kicked off only a couple of weeks after Labour's victory back in July. Now, if you've read the industrial strategy that came out for consultation a couple of weeks ago, you may remember that the first sentence in that document says growth is the number one mission for this government. But growth isn't going to happen straight away, and it will only happen if there's investment into those sectors which generate or support economic value. For example, the energy and clean tech sectors. And today's budget, as you heard, has reaffirmed government's ambition for the UK to become a clean energy superpower. We love that. 125 million has been allocated for GB Energy, at least 100 million of that to go on project development. Government has also backed nuclear, carbon capture and hydrogen, 3.9 billion for carbon capture usage and storage, 11 green hydrogen projects and 2.7 billion allocated for Sizewell C. A more detailed clean energy action plan setting out the approach to developing that clean electricity network by 2030 is due to be published next week. But hang on, G. You said you'd talk about what this means for my energy bills, not that big picture stuff. Well, understanding where the generation investment is going informs what might happen on things like contracts with difference scheme. And this is where I get to dig into the spreadsheets and start to look. What I really like to do with budgets is pull together the data provided on forecasts for Treasury receipts. That's money coming into government from environmental levies and the other taxes that we have to pay. Let's start with the one everyone knows, climate change levy. CCL, climate change levy, is predicted to stay pretty constant over the next 5 years at around 1.8 to 1.9 billion of Treasury receipts every year. The main rates of the CCL for gas, electricity and solid fuels will be uprated in line with RPI. That'll take place in 2026 to 27. The main rate for LPG will stay frozen and the reduced rates of CCL will again stay at the same fixed percentage. What about climate change agreements? Well, if you missed it, there was a new 6-year scheme starting in January 2025 through to December 2030. That was announced by the previous government. New news today is that from the 1st of January 2026, new entrants to the scheme will be able to claim reduction on CCL immediately. You won't have to complete a full target period. Now, that only applies to new entrants to the CCA scheme, but it's something to bear in mind if you're looking to get those savings by joining that scheme. Now let's take a look at environmental levies. Environmental levies are Contract for Difference, Capacity Market, Green Gas Levy, and the Legacy RO Renewables Obligation. These are all fiscally neutral. Basically, any increase in income to the Treasury is offset by spending. So you pay it on your bill, your energy supplier gives it to the government, then government gives it to the generators that are supported through that policy. RO is going to reduce as older generators exit the scheme, but this is more than replaced by expected increase from collection of capacity market and CFD costs. I've put it into a graph. Capacity market is particularly worth watching. This is paid to generators who can come online at short notice when we need extra energy supply to meet demand. So previously, a lot of CM contracts went to diesel generators, but that's not very green. So we're now seeing a more storage and demand response in these auctions. A challenge, I won't call it a downside, but it is a challenge to having more renewables, is that we need to make smarter use of these dispatchable technologies that can switch on at short notice. That means the capacity providers will be more and more important. And I don't know what future auction rounds will do, but I do think this will become a lot less easy to predict. So we're probably going to see more reconciliation on the bills. Make sure you've got a good system in place for validating your bills and checking that those costs are correctly allocated. The other interesting one is the UK emissions trading scheme. Now, even though the scheme is widening to include the maritime and aviation sectors, total expenditure by business on the ETS allowances is not forecast to increase. Quite the opposite. Now, sadly, there's going to be some attrition built into that, but also government is not expecting the carbon price to do anything crazy in the next 5 years. Again, tradable nature of this means it's not easy to predict it far out, but it should give some comfort to those that are in the ETS. I've pulled all of these different tabs together and done a little bit of just a small amount of work on it to present it in one view and one table here with the areas that are most important. So yes, there's your ETS line in the dark at the top. If you're not in ETS, then you can see upwards expectations for non-commodities. But if you are in ETS, then actually staying a little bit more steady as a total budget picture. I love non-commodity costs. Don't pretend you don't like them too. Okay, important reminder. That graph is not your budget for your bill. This is receipts into Treasury. But I've used this technique for about 8 years now to give my clients a high-level overview of policy direction, and almost all of them find it helpful. For specifics, please talk to your carbon advisor or energy consultant. Okay, so what else is there? Well, on the carbon side, any business importing materials with a high embedded carbon should by now be aware of CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. The sectoral scope for CBAM was confirmed yesterday. It is aluminium, cement, fertiliser, hydrogen, iron and steel. The full response on the CBAM consultation is out now, and that will come in from January 2027. Sticking with industry, Ms. Reeves has committed 163 million to continue the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund out till 2027-28. That gives support to industrial processes, manufacturers to invest in deep decarbonisation and energy efficiency, including on unproven technologies. So if you're wanting to do a little bit of a trial, look at some innovative ways of reducing your energy or carbon impact, it might be worth having a look at that fund and seeing whether that can work for you. And one thing I'd hoped for on the private sector side was some sort of tax super deduction for investment in clean technology. That hasn't happened. But if you have responsibility for fleet as well as buildings, the first-year allowances for zero-emission cars and EV charge points will be extended to end of March 2026. Basically, it means you get a bit of shield against corporation tax if you spend money on electric vehicle charge points. So that should help get your FD on the side. Electrification for transport, all very well, but what about heat? Heat decarbonisation is the tricky bit for every decarbonisation strategy. The budget has committed 3.4 billion to heat decarb and household energy efficiency, of which 1.8 billion is specific to fuel poverty schemes. There's also further 1 billion to be released over 3 years through the public sector decarbonisation scheme. Now, these are both continuance of previous government policy, but it should be good news for the public and social housing sectors, although we don't yet know how that funding will be allocated. Now, interestingly, in the write-up on the budget, it says on the government pages that the 1 billion PSDS would fund local energy schemes. I don't think that they mean energy schemes in the way that you and I might, i.e. municipal energy. I think that's a slight kind of difference in approach. But we'll wait and see. Devil's in the detail. So to wrap this up, Rachel Reeves said that the budget is going to mark an end to short-termism and provide focus on growth. I think anyone hearing that would be hoping for a budget that provides sort of long-level certainty and allows us to plan ahead. I'm not sure she's wholly achieved that on the energy side. The devil, as I said, is in the detail, and we will know more as that detail comes out. So we still need to wait for the Clean Power 2030 action plan due on Monday. There's also going to be a consultation on reforms to grid connection agreements coming out next week, not before time. Look forward to seeing what's in that. So now, though, keep up the good work. Look out for those consultations and the news on that decarbonisation funding. Make sure you've got a good bill validation system to track those pesky non-commodity reconciliations, or a really good consultant to do it for you. And if you have any questions or you want some more bespoke support, you know where I am. Thank you for listening.